familiar to you. Famous words. Not all words are famous for the right reasons, but maybe this one is. Let's start with this. All you need is love. All you need is love. I'm not going to sing it for you. Someone can. All you need is love. All you need is love. Love. Love is all you need. 1967, July, just like now, the Beatles. Some of you were around when that came out. That scares me. Love is all you need. Is there some truth to that, friends? Is love all you need? There's some truth to that. They're probably not singing about God's love. Some kind of love. But there's some truth to that. So today we're going to talk about love. Whether you want to or not, we're going to talk about love. We've been in a series about 3 things that when all fades away, many things, both gift and of this earth, pass away, there are 3 things that will remain. That of faith, hope, and today the final piece of our series, which is love. What will truly remain? We're going to go through a lot of texts today, but our main text for our series has been in 1 Corinthians 13. So if you have a Bible, I would invite you to turn there. It's better in your own Bibles than on the screen, but it'll be on the screens for those who have difficulty reading off the device or would prefer it to be on the screens. That will be there as well. We're going to be in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. 1 Corinthians 13. And we're going to actually begin in verse 1 today. We've been in this chapter really for 3 weeks now. But we're going to start with the beginning of it as we have not had that. So 1 Corinthians chapter 13, we're going to begin in verse 1. Speaking about love. It says this, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I have become sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. So when you listen to the orchestral music and you hear that huge crash of the cymbal. You know, I was in band and orchestra many times in my life. I played the trombone, and then I got to sing with choirs with some of them. And man, I always thought, man, that would be a fun job in the percussion, just to hit the cymbals. Just clash. Although there is some technique to it, and it needs to be perfectly timed, because imagine a clash at the wrong time. Not very good. If I have not love, that's what you become. And though I have the gift of prophecy, this is one of those gifts that would pass away eventually, and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith, so that I could remove or move mountains, but have not love, what am I? I am nothing. I am nothing. Isn't that a pretty interesting thing? Someone here in this room, you could have faith so big that you can move mountains. And this is that comparison to that of like if you had but the faith of a mustard seed. Very, very tiny. You could do many things. Someone in this room could have plenty of faith. One that could shake and move, literally, this world. But if you don't have love, you still have nothing. Isn't that an interesting equation? So, in terms of what is more worthwhile, what has more weight, the text is clearly telling us love maybe wins out in this. And verse 3 says, and though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body even to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing. That's pretty serious, is it not, folks? That's pretty serious. That's a lot that you could do that we as people say, well, that's what being a true, real Christian is. You're willing to be persecuted for it. You can move mountains for it. You have tons of knowledge about prophecy and of the Bible, all of those things. But guess what? You can do all of that, but if you have not love, it's nothing. It's meaningless. So what does that tell us, just to start? Are all of our priorities as Christians on the right thing? Have we made the right priorities as believers? If you're a believer this morning, what have your priorities been about? So who this morning is unloving? Then I wonder who needs to hear this message. You know who this message was for, and we've kind of danced around it, was the people in Corinth, the Corinthian church there. What about them? They were not what we would describe as love. They had, and this is the special thing, they had received Christ, they had become a believing people as a church, yet they held on to essentially every single thing that was a part of their life before they knew Christ and simply added Christ to their life. Make it clear. My life is one way, and all I do is add Christ to it and keep moving in that same direction as the same person. See, that's not how life is supposed to be. When Christ comes into our life, that changes some things. I don't know about you, but when you came to know Christ, received him into your heart, accepted him as your Savior, some things probably shifted in your life a little bit. If it hasn't, it will. You're on this walk with Christ as time goes on. Some things that they held on to that Paul specifically calls out. Materialism, jealousy, sexual immorality, selfishness, competition. They had a competitiveness even within spirituality. In the church, they had competitiveness. Not even just like, oh, I'm competitive in my business. No, they as church members were competitive with one another. They were antagonistic towards one another in all things. These are just a couple that they called out. As one church historian put it this way, he said, Corinth was having a far greater impact on the church than the church was on Corinth. So is the world having more of an impact on you than you are having on the world? When Jesus talked about the salt and the light, he said, you are the salt of the earth, calling you to salt the earth. It seems like the earth and Corinth were salting the church rather than the church helping salt the world. What about you and your family? Is your family and you in your life, are you more affected by the world than you affect the world? Something to consider. And what was the most grievous of all things that the Corinthian church lacked? Love. They resented each other. They sued each other within the church. They excluded one another from groups that they didn't really want that person a part of. You know, they had a small group who would go and do things, and they would not invite someone else in the church just because, well, this is kind of our thing, and we've known each other longer. They formed cliques, as you would. They would sexually violate one another and their own marriage beds. They would boast against each other about who was the best in the church. Their marriage was flippant, and it was merely a civil matter, and you could do with it whatever you would like. They didn't feed those in need, not whether in the church or out. And the worship of God, when they got together each week and each day throughout the week, was solely based on who had the most gifts related to prominence, to worship. It was not a welcoming, inviting experience for all to participate. It was solely based around who was the best at the given thing. So churches became more popularity things and about talent and who has the most gifts. Things like knowledge, things like prophecy, things like tongues. They were fighting for prominence within their local church. So what about us today? Do you think we would be described as such? Do we have anything to do with what the Corinth church was facing? Do you see any semblance of that today? I got one, yeah. I got that, yes. Well, in 2022, another one of a Protestant denomination, the Episcopal Church did a survey in 2022 across our country and said, what words do you associate most with Christianity? So let's take a look. Hypocritical, judgmental, self-righteous, arrogant, unforgiving, and disrespectful. All 6 of those had about a 70% from this survey. And there was plenty of positive words as well, but most of them only got 15 to 20% feedback of that which was associated with Christians. These are the ones that were all pretty much over 60 and 70%. In that order, from top to bottom. This is what people would associate most with Christianity. And you could say, well, this is predicted. Well, Christians aren't supposed to be liked. They're not supposed to be this thing. But some of these have nothing to do with theology. I mean, if people don't think we're respectful, I think if someone disagrees with me being a Christian, they should still find me to be a respectful person. Do you agree? Or unforgiving, or arrogant, or self-righteous, judgmental, hypocritical. Very few of these have anything to do with the text. Hypocritical is where you really start getting into it, and judgmental. But even the final 4 is, I think someone, even if they don't agree with my belief system or my practice, should still find me to be somewhat like this. Are we on the same page? So we're not too far off from the Corinthian church. So when you look at it, you say, man, they were a really messed up people. Thank God we're good. Thank God we're not like them. And that's what our first inclination is going to be. Just like some of the things that I'll say today, the first inclination is going to be like, man, someone needed to hear that. Oh, I gotta send this video to my sibling. I gotta send this to my kids. Oh, I gotta send this to them. Meanwhile, you're neglecting that which might be for you today. And so when we come back to love, there is a great need for love. And you know those great verses about love that for those who've been in a wedding or been to any wedding or watched any movie or anything, everyone's familiar with these words. We'll take a look at those in 1 Corinthians 13, continuing in verse 4. Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself. It is not puffed up. That's a callback to when it said that knowledge puffs up in terms of boasting. Does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. That sounds like a good love, doesn't it? There's a reason why that's read at Christian weddings and even non-Christian weddings. And it's become a pop culture thing that some people may not even know that's from the Bible. That's just someone who really knew love wrote about it. And I think the person who did write it did know an awful lot about love. Who wants to experience love like that? That's the kind of love that I want. I want that kind of love exhibited in my home. I want myself to receive it, but I also want to give that kind of love. Because that's what love really is, right? Love is both given and received. It is a mutual experience between two people. And then that final word that comes right in verse 8. Love never fails. Love never fails. Yet many of us have experienced love that does fail. Have we not? You see, even in the church, we are not exempt from experiencing the realities of love at times, that it does not always last forever. Things that we make with good intentions and good desires sometimes just don't make it. We've experienced it relationally. This love never fails here. What's important to this is that love never fails. This is talking about time. It's talking about time. A better way to translate it, or another way to understand it in our simple English, would be love that never reaches its end. A love that never falls or ends or stops. A love that never falls away. A love, rather, maybe even this is more clear, a love that's never abolished. It never is done away with. So in terms of time, love will outlive everything else. It is like a cockroach in a nuclear disaster. Love cannot be done away with. No matter what happens, love will remain at the end. And this is directly tied into chapter 12 and 13 when he's talking about all of the things that they focused on, thinking that they could put them in their pocket and their luggage and take them with them. And it was the most important thing for them to focus on. And he's saying, hey, when all is stripped away, there's only one thing that will truly remain. It will outlive everything else that you're even putting time and effort into. It's not only just more important, it also will last longer. And that's love. Ultimately, love is eternal. And man, isn't that beautiful? I think that was a jewelry ad. Love is forever. Zales. Love is eternal. So why do we as Christians seem to put the greatest amount of effort, time, resources, arguing, energy, committees, time, money, living, committeeing, all of these things, why do we seem to put so much emphasis into that which is temporary? Why? If we're told what does last forever, why do we put so much effort into that which will not? Any idea? Why? You can talk to me, it's okay. You don't have to raise your hand. Any ideas? Why do we do that? It's easier to do that. That's right. That's right. We can keep ourselves busy with other things. And so for them, they were doing this in droves. This is what they were focused on. So if we were to focus solely on love as our primary characteristic or desire or goal for our lives as Christians, what would that even look like? Because have we truly experienced that yet? Can you truly say that you in your life, even just you, your primary concern, investment of time, resources, energy, study, surrender, your focus, number one, is on love? Have you been a part of a church that's ever done that? Small church, meaning local church, and then big church, the capital C of the whole world of the church. Have you experienced that truly in a community? No, because we focus on the other things. And so Paul is calling this out. Why are we doing this? What would that even look like? I would have to dream to be able to envision what that would look like because I don't have a personal experience of it to attach it to. And maybe that's what's difficult for us because we can't even imagine what an amazing love would look like that in the church when some of us don't experience that with ourselves. Some of us truly haven't experienced the true love with God or from God or even in our homes or marriages. So let alone getting to the church or all of Christianity when I don't even have that in my own life, in my own personal life. And so we have to deal with that first. So how can we truly define love? This week, I don't have time to share it, but maybe go home and look up videos on YouTube of people asking strangers on the street, what is love? And you'll get a wide variety of answers. Do I have a couple here today? What is love? And you don't have to Christianize it. Just, well, what is love? What would we define as love?
Total acceptance.
Total acceptance?
Putting the needs of others in front of yourself.
Okay, needs of others in front of yourself. Anyone else? Love.
Feeling. Self-denial.
Self-denial, feeling, yep. Okay, anyone else? Feeling, self-denial, self-sacrifice. Anyone else? Love, what's love?
Time spent together.
Okay, time. One more. Love, what's love?
Protection of others.
Protection of others? Okay.
Endurance.
Endurance. So love, I think love can truly only be understood or defined in action. Because is love truly a feeling? I find it very difficult to find a place in Scripture that love is solely defined as something you feel. I have a difficulty with that, and I'll share some with you. I truly believe the core of love, as is pointed out, is self-sacrifice. And that's only because, not just because that's good, but it's who we are using to define what love is. I may not be defined as love, but the Bible tells us about this love. Let me just show you some examples. Let's start with one in John 15, verse 13. You might be familiar with some of these or hearing these for the first time. Let's hear about love. Not from movies or TV shows, but from the Bible. Here are some descriptions. John 15, 13. Greater love has no one than to lay down one's life for his friends. That was that self-sacrificing love. This willingness to do for others, even at your own cost. That's pretty loving, right? You call up a friend or a loved one, and they say, man, I can't do that, but you know what, for you, I'm willing to do it. You know, I'll give you a discount even though I can't afford to do that. Or, you know what, don't even worry about it. I've got it for you. Or, man, I have work, but I guess I can call out of work to come help you. Or, man, I'm going to have to cut my vacation short to come back and take care of you because you're in need. I'm going to do that. So this self-sacrificing love, or even just to literally sacrifice your own life, that's love. Why? The Bible talks about love, that word love. We always talk about this in church. We use agape. Agape is the noun of what is God's love, this self-sacrificing love. But the word is traditionally and typically only used in the verb form, which is agapao, the verb form. So it goes beyond just sentiments of romance and good words. And it's to love unselfishly. It is the most satisfying love because it is that which you get to give and receive. Is love without risk? Love is risk in itself. Because to love requires risk. Sometimes it means some pain. But what happens if we try to avoid the pain of love? We never truly experience love. And so I think If the Bible is calling us to truly experience love, then that risk would be worth it, would it not? The risk to experience love. Otherwise, what happens? We end up lonely. We end up not experiencing love. And those who don't experience love, that's not really a life you want to live, is it? And some of us here today, we may even feel like we ourselves here today don't know love, haven't experienced love. Or you may know someone who it seems their life is devoid of love, of truly experiencing love as God would describe it, not the world. But did you know that love is supposed to be a dominating factor or descriptor of Christian life? Christians can actually be defined and identified by it. John 13, just a couple chapters before, in 35. By this, all will know that you are my disciples, if you have what? Love for one another. So how will they know who you are and who your allegiance is to? How will they know to identify you as a Christian? By love, not how big your mouth is. By love, not how hypocritical, judgmental, self-fulfilling. By your love is how they will identify you by it. And so how important is this love? Oh, it goes beyond this, just between us and others and here in this church. In Matthew chapter 25, watch this one. Jesus says, and he will set the sheep on his right hand and the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right hand, come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you took me in. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. So deeds of love we're now talking about now. So love in action. So deeds of love reveal the evidence of the internal love in what you feel, what you experience. And so for you, if you claim to bear and embody and have love, that will result in what? In action or deed. So this is directly connected to that part in the Bible. We talk about the book of James, and we talk about works. Is this salvation by works? No. It's merely saying you have claimed to have love and to be about love and to embody it and to be a part of it, yet you exhibited none of it. And so you claim to be loving, yet where were you? Where did you show that love? Because I don't know about you, and I'll just pick on my wife, that's okay. But if you told me that you loved me each day, but then did nothing to exhibit or demonstrate that love, what would that do? What would that mean? What would that do to love? It would distort what love means. It would become a counterfeit love. And this is how we end up in our communities where churches, I can stand up here and talk forever about love, and then it's just a disconnect. People, they talk about love all the time, yet they never do it. Or you may have someone who says, of course I love you. I told you when I married you. And I haven't changed my mind. Well, if you love me so much, how come I don't experience that love? If you really do love me, as massive as you say you do love me, then how come it can't reach to me? How come I'm having trouble experiencing that, seeing that, feeling that? And so the world, when we as Christians claim to be about love, because what I didn't show you in the study, by the way, is that is what they assume that's what they understand Christians to be. Guess what? Over 80% of them believe that Jesus was a loving man and exhibited good teachings and lessons and they think is valuable for people to learn. This is from non-believers. So if they believe that Christ teaches good things, Christ is of love, Christ demonstrated and taught good things, yet we as Christians say that we love like that, but then we don't, what is that doing to our society and those who we desire to come to know Christ? Comes back to that core issue, which is being a hypocrite. And man, that will do so much to distort the minds of someone when you say you love them, yet it doesn't actually, it's not love. And this counterfeit love begins to happen. And we'll come back to that. But what is love without action or deed? What is love? By this we know love. Let's see. Because he laid down his life for us. Not me, but him. And we also ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. This is kind of like the verse we just read. But whoever has this world's goods and sees his brother in need and shuts up his heart from him, how does the love of God abide in him? So when you say you have love in your heart, but then you don't show that you have love in your heart to someone, do you really have that love? It means nothing. To go back to 1 Corinthians 13. If you have all of these things but not love, then what do you have? You just got nothing. And so the word, I want you to notice the word abide at the end. The love of God, abide in him. The text for our series this week is abide in faith, hope, and love. Abide in it. To abide in the love of God. John is asking the rhetorical question here. How does it happen? What does it look like to have this love really in us? Abide, faith, hope, love. These three. But the greatest of these is love. To abide in it. Not merely know it or be acquainted with it. Or masquerade at it. On one Sabbath a month. Or just on the weekend. Or just when I'm with like-minded believers. But to abide in it. I'm not leaving that love. That love is always with me because it's who I am. It's what defines me. And it is who I am. I am defined by that love. And there it comes through my actions. And so when we come back to 1 John 3 here, how does the love of God abide in one? My little children, let us not love in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth. Let's not do love of merely lip service, friends. It's as simple as that. If you want to claim to be a loving person, you have to actually do it. Otherwise, stop even pretending to be love. Because not only is it hurting you and how people understand you, but it's also hurting God. Because you claim to be sharing God's love with others. And so you're actually blaspheming God in the process by incorrectly loving one another. And what is action or deed without love? We just read that. Nothing. It is, in the end, nothing. And it comes back to our text for this week. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, even what I do know right now, even though sometimes it feels like a lot, is still not. But then I shall know just as I also am known by God. And now abide faith, hope, love, these three, but the greatest of these is love. Why is love the greatest, my friends? Why is love the greatest? Why does he say the greatest of all these is love? Why? Why is love the greatest? What is it? Why is love the greatest?
Because it takes action on your part.
Okay, because I can do some other things without action, right? Yeah, I can. And the greatest of these is love. Well, let's think about it. Faith, hope, and love. Which is the most important of these? Faith and hope, they're actually a part of love. Faith and hope are actually encompassed in love. For example, what need will we have for faith when we are reunited with our God in heaven? Will you need faith in heaven?
Yeah.
You'll already have the realization or the actuality of what that faith was in. So you will already experience that what you have had faith in will be fully realized at that time. The same with hope. That which you have hoped for has now become actualized. It has now been realized. It is to something, and then it happens. So love is eternal, and it will outlast all of these things. And we're going to come back to it. Even in these verses, it says that they are encompassed in them. For in this, the verses that we just read, coming back, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Believes all things is a part of love. Guess what? That means faith. Hopes all things. Guess what? That's encompassed in love. Hopes. So faith and hope are a part of love. They're encompassed within them. That is what this is. And we know 1 John 4:8 says that God is love. That is who he is. He is the very eternal definition of God. So friends, what makes you Christ-like, or let me say, what makes you God-like is love. Gifts, ministries, faith, hope, patience, they will one day no longer serve the purpose that they were given to serve while you were here on this earth, because they will be fully realized, as 1 Corinthians said, when we are face to face, when the perfect has arrived. They will no longer serve that. And so now, our showing love, our practicing love, our living love, now should be our highest of priorities, my friends. More important than any other virtues or gifts or talents. Why? Because love is what actually connects us to God. It is what truly connects us to God. Well, how do we love like that? Do you want to love like that? Do you want to learn to love like that? Well, how do we do that? The Bible tells us this in Ephesians chapter 5. We're going to spend a couple moments in there. We're going to turn towards it. How do we truly love like that? What does it look like? Hang on with me. I pray. This is so important. Ephesians 5, we're going to come to now. Therefore, in verse 1, Ephesians 5, therefore be imitators of God as dear children, and walk in love. That's an active. As Christ also has loved us and given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling aroma. And he goes on to share some other things that are not a part of this. Fornication, uncleanness, covetousness. Let it not even be named among you as is fitting for saints. The first thing I have for you is this. You must know God, drawing close to him, in order to imitate him. Do you know that, right? To actually be Christ-like, you actually have to know Christ. So a lot of people think that they are Christ-like, but they don't really know Christ. They're like something, but it's just not like Christ. Because they haven't drawn close enough to him. Because they believe that in the 40 minutes a week, or as the national average is, once a month, of going to any religious institution, that a couple minutes each month will be enough for them to learn what they need to know and how to imitate someone fully. We send our kids to school for basically an entire day, multiple times a week, for them to imitate positive behaviors and skills and practices and things throughout their day. And we barely get them to do that. So how are we learning to imitate that of God?
Through our relationship.
But if we were strangers, how would you ever imitate me? For someone you hadn't met. They said, hey, do you know this person? No. Can you imitate them for me? It's going to be a guess. It's not going to be accurate. And so what's the danger? We have believers walking around imitating that which they know not of. And that's not good. It takes knowing God to truly know love, for God is love. And so it takes knowing him to truly even know what love is. And so any other metric of understanding about love or anything, it's not really love. And it's not just to imitate him, but to walk in love. And he defines it specifically as Christ also has loved us. So love is not defined by what we think, but through the action of what Christ has done for us, which is his self-sacrificing love. So the very definition of love at its truest core is what? Christ died for you and me and for everyone. So if your love is not similar to that or like that, then it's not Christ-like. Romans 13 verse 8 says this, owe no one anything except to love one another. For he who loves another has fulfilled the law. So you want to talk about importance? Love is what will fulfill that law, that love for one another. And he expounds upon this. For the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, you shall not covet. And if there is any other commandment, are all summed up in this saying, namely, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no harm to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfillment of the law. If you want to understand the commandments, they all come back to the core tenet of love. If you're truly loving between you and God, our first 4 commandments, and then the final, the rest of the 10 are all between you and one another. It's all back to love. Galatians chapter 5 says the same thing. For all the law is fulfilled in one word. Even in this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Can it be any clearer to us? All throughout the New Testament makes it so clear. Here's what love is. But then we get bogged down by everything else, and we spend all of our time with everything else. Because we have this idea that, why do we need to spend so much time learning about love? We know what love is. Or that's what those people who go to church on another day do. All they do is talk about love. And they love everyone. Anyone can do anything they want. We love everyone. And we throw down every other person who believes and practices a certain way. Charismatic Christianity has kind of figured this out in a way. They're not entirely correct either. But they have a stronger commitment to at least trying to demonstrate this. But I know someone's going to ask this, so let's get to it. A truly Christ-like love must refuse every kind of counterfeit love as well. Because there's love and there's counterfeit love. And we've experienced some of those loves, and we've talked about that already, what a counterfeit love would look like. Ephesians continues in that way. Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor coarse jesting, which are not fitting, but rather giving of thanks. For this you know, that no fornicator, unclean person, covetous man, or as an idolater, has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not be partakers with them. So authentic Christian love is not authentic, and hold with me please, so I can get this in context. Truly authentic Christian love is intolerant of that which is not true love. It is intolerant of perversions of what is not true love. Now it got quiet and I got some attention. Because the Bible calls for, even in this very text, and I'll show you, tolerance in love, in gentleness and respect. So in context here, yet not tolerating or associating immoral behavior or false teaching among you. So love today has been redefined as what? A broad tolerance and acceptance of anything no matter what, and that is what love is. It overlooks sin, it embraces good and evil as if they're the same thing. One writer put it this way, and I wonder what you think about it. It said, well, that's not love, that's just apathy. You're apathetic. Because any standard or definition of love is true, regardless of who says it. If that's love to you, if that's what you mean to it, then that would mean that we're just merely apathetic to it. And we say, okay. Here's the reality, though, coming back to principles for us as believers. Even in dispute or disagreement, guess what? Christians should be exercising restraint. It's that fruit of the Spirit, self-control, and show respect. And for us as believers, it's one thing to disagree with one another, and it's another thing to disparage someone. To disparage another person. It's quite a different thing. So as believers, we have to hold fast to the truth while showing compassion to those who would question or disagree with that truth. Are you with me?
Yeah.
So like Jesus, we have to be full of both grace and truth, it says in John chapter 1, verse 14. Peter helps us with this. What about this way? With all lowliness and gentleness, with long-suffering, bearing with one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Does that make more sense for you? Here's a love in action in a community of how we're supposed to sort this out. What's your character like in you keeping to this bearing with one another in love? So there's a place where your tolerance is through this lowliness and gentleness with long-suffering, this patience that bears with one another in love. Endeavoring, that means you're actively trying to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. This is all about God's love anyway. And so when we talk about this peace, what if God was apathetic to us? So some of us, we are apathetic to love which is not really love. We are. We just accept it. We just see it and what if God was apathetic to us in love? mean, look at Romans 5:8. But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts. I'm sorry, this is for 1 Peter 3. We can continue in this one too. But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you for a reason, the hope that is in you with meekness and fear. This is another explanation of how we are to work with one another in love, even though we may disagree or have some different understandings. But remember what God has done for us here. God demonstrates his own love toward us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. What does that mean? Christ's love in action for us was not apathetic. Because Christ could say, oh man, well, I guess that's what happened to them in their sin. Christ did this for us while we were still sinners. He did action of love for us. He was not indifferent or apathetic to us in our condition. Are you with me? Because what is our condition? Our condition is sin. Guess what? There's nothing we can do about that without God. And so God steps in, and he's not apathetic. His real love reaches out to us, even in the depths of our sin and our brokenness and despair. God sent his son Jesus to die for all mankind. That is how he demonstrated his love to us. That's the very definition of love. And so when we're working with one another and we're relating to one another, it's tolerance in the form of gentleness and respect and giving reasons for things with meekness and with fear. And bearing with one another through these various virtues that it's calling us to do and to be. Absolutely. 100%. That is how we are to be. All in light of who God is and what he has done for you and I. And so how do we receive this love? We're coming to an end. It's okay. How do we receive this love then? How do you receive it? You know, friends, this gift is available to you right now. You know that? You don't have to go out and find a suitor. You don't have to go mingle and meet people in order to know a true love. And that's the beautiful thing about Christianity. At every single moment of time in history and for history that will be made and continue, everyone at that very moment has an opportunity to receive that gift. Isn't that powerful? Someone could be walking right down the street past our building, and at that moment they can, or you right now here today, can receive this gift. The Bible's abundantly clear about this. And I promise there's no number to call. I don't need your credit card number. It's no pyramid scheme. I'm not going to double your money if you give it to me. There's nothing. Here it is, because it's not even my gift to give. Watch this. Oh my, is this beautiful? I pray that there's an amen when we're done reading this. That if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Period. For with the heart one believes unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. For the scripture says, whoever believes on him will not be put to shame. Can I get an amen? That's abundantly clear. If that is your desire, you do that and receive him into your life. Man, friends, there is so much that you probably focus on in your daily life just to keep the plates spinning. Finances, education, work. Some of you working multiple jobs, going to school, raising children, managing your own families and lives, and fielding calls and insurance and kids and grandkids, school, peer pressures, family, friends, health, relationships, gifts, abilities, your career. That's an awful lot to focus on today in this day and age, is it not? Where do I have time for love? Let me tell you, I don't think you can do all of them excellently. In fact, I shared with you 2 weeks ago, Paul said it is the most excellent way. It is the bigliest of efforts. It is the greatest of things that you could possibly do. The greatest of these is love. And this is available to you here and now. And the call upon your heart is abundantly simple, but not easy. Abide faith. Now, abide faith, hope, love. These three, but the greatest of these is love. So when it all comes down to it, friends, what will you be known for, be known by, and your ultimate legacy, both as a Christian, as a family, and us as a church. So there may be some times for us to have some conversations where there's a lot of good, important things that can't have as much of a precedent in order for us to put love first. So that means us being right all the time. We might have to put love first. Us prioritizing being the best we can in our career or our job and trying to get a promotion or to do more and to get all of these things, the rat race of life that some of us are still caught up in. Is that worth it if I can't focus as much on love? And if it's sacrificing my love? What about here in church? Our desire to argue and be right and desire, or if we're doing things correctly, is love at the forefront of who we are? When you talk with your loved ones and maybe you disagree with them or get into arguments over whatever it may be, differences in what your favorite flavor of ice cream is, or in a presidential candidate or politics, or your favorite cars or not, anything that you want to disagree with, guess what? Is it more important that you are heard and your opinion gets across and you convince them of your desire at the sacrifice of love? No, love is the sacrifice that determines those conversations and that relationship. And so there's some hard things that we need to do to implement this into our life. Because if I can be vulnerable and honest with you, I think at times these three have been important to me, but they've certainly not been first. I think love is the first thing for me to drop. It's easy to keep love when I'm just trying to be loving. But what about when we're trying to be a lot of things? We're trying to be smart, we're trying to be kind, we're trying to be good, we're trying to be the best, we're trying to be following certain orders and policies, we're trying to do all of these things, but love. All of them pass away and fade, but there's one that is greater than all of them. And you may not like that. You may not. Because you might not get your way. It means some things might have to change in your life in order for you to truly be loving. May need some conversations need to happen in your family or in your life. May need that some priorities need to shift in terms of your time, your resources, where your efforts have been. And maybe as a church that we need to stop and rethink if our church has love as its highest priority and what that would look like. Because is it? Is it about money? Is it about people in seats? Is it about our parliament? Is it about the building? Is it about all of those things? They might be important, but love has to be most important aspect. And that which is the love of God ultimately. So I want to challenge you as we close here to walk, learn, to do, to listen, to be love. God is love. And I don't know about you, friends, but I want to be love. I want to be known as who I am is love. And I think, although everything in my body tells me otherwise and tries to say it's important, but not the most important, we have to win the battle against ourselves and allow that love to be number one. And that means we need to put ourselves behind it in second and all the way at the bottom, even if it requires it. The sacrificing love. So we're going to sing about the love of God together.